Hello, Internet. Welcome back to 5 Minutes on Heavy Questions. Uh, Today, we're going to be talking about, well, what everyone else is talking about, the state of health in the world around us and how that interacts with the service industry. I wanted to put that out there right at the beginning in case that trigger warning might bum you out. I totally get it, but if you think this is the type of conversation that we should be having, and if you find this conversation helpful, I implore you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone you think might need to hear it or anywhere you think it might be helpful. Let's start with a story. In 2009, I worked for the University of Michigan in a coffee shop that was located on the ground floor of the undergraduate library. While I was working there, I contracted H1N1, swine flu. And I remember calling into my boss and saying, hey, I don't think I can come in. I'm got a fever, and I think I have the swine flu. And she said, well, do you have a doctor's note? I said, no, I hadn't been to a doctor yet, but I have a fever of 103, 104. I don't really remember what it was. I just remember it was high. And she said, well, everyone else on staff has already called off, and they all have doctor's notes. You're the last one, so you have to come in. And she essentially gave me the ultimatum that if I didn't go into work, I wouldn't have a job. So I went to work. And I remember it was finals time, and a lot of people came through that coffee shop. I made dozens, if not hundreds, of drinks that day. And I was coughing and sneezing and sweating, and it was bad. And I wasn't patient zero, but I was certainly a pretty active node in that matrix of people who got sick at the University of Michigan. And I tell that story not to shame the university or to shame that boss. In fact, she was telling the truth. Everyone else had called off, so she actually worked the shift right next to me. And a couple days later, she was sick. Rather, I tell that story to point out that restaurant work gets the short end of the stick when it comes to healthcare. And it often is the case that restaurant workers are on the front lines of things like the pandemic that's currently going on. We deal directly with people. We clean up after them. We touch things that they put in their mouths. All of these facts coalesce in the idea that as the pandemic expands, if I continue to go to work, the likelihood that I will remain healthy goes towards zero. And this is something that I have come to terms with because I've lived through it before with H1N1, albeit not as bad a pandemic. Now, luckily for my health, the governor of Michigan issued a statement today halting all restaurants and dine-in spaces and essentially shut down bars and restaurants, which is great for my health, if a little bit harmful to my pocketbook. It is certainly the most responsible thing you can do during a pandemic, but we, that is restaurant workers, don't just get the short end of the stick when it comes to healthcare. We often are not offered health insurance, for instance, but even if we were, it wouldn't be economically feasible for us to take the time off when we're sick. Now, there might be this idea that, oh, well, that's your fault. You should have budgeted correctly. And I would argue that I think we actually budgeted pretty well. We don't make much money between New Year's and, say, the summer. We rely on days like Mardi Gras or Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day to kind of pad out the budget. And when you cancel something like St. Patrick's Day, for instance, we take a hit. And if any of my service industry friends out there are working in places that they haven't yet canceled your restaurant, if you get sick, you'll have to rely on sick days or paid time off, a lot of which isn't offered through restaurants, or if it is, not enough of it is offered through restaurants. I've been working for the company I work for about 9 months now, and in those 9 months, I've accrued enough sick hours to take about 3 days off of work. And if I contract the COVID-19 virus, I imagine I'll be sick for longer than 3 days. So, I wanted to put this out there because I wanted to tell any people in the service industry who are dealing with the same thing that I am, or something worse, that I'm with you, and I wish you luck, and we'll get through this. If you're a customer, going to a restaurant right now in a place where they haven't shut down dine-in service, remember to tip a little above average, and also be aware of how you walk through that space and navigate that space responsibly. If you blow your nose in a napkin, put it in your pocket and discard of it yourself. Remember to do what you can to limit our risks. If you are someone who is perhaps higher up and can maybe control a little bit more in the public policy domain, see if you could work on something that would allow us to ease the economic hardship that's going to happen to service industry workers. I know a lot of my friends are going to go under this month, and my heart goes out to you. And it's a rough time, so I wanted to end on a note that brought me a little joy. I used to work for a woman named Polly Watts of the Avenue Pub in New Orleans, Louisiana. And one of Polly's employees wrote this about her recently. I rarely talk about behind the scenes at the Avenue Pub. It's been really, really tough. Since Ash Wednesday, we've spent endless hours trying to formulate game plans in regards to COVID-19. We're disinfecting everything multiple times a day. If staff or family member is sick, they're to stay home. Our full-time staff is offered health insurance through the pub, and the pub pays 50%. Polly just purchased short-term disability insurance for all full-time staff at no cost to them. Polly is also offering emergency paid time off to full and part-time staff for COVID-19 or the flu. This way, if a staff member has to stay home to care for their family, they have some income. We're also cooking chili and rice and beans and sending it home with the staff to stock their freezers just in case. We don't know what to expect in the coming weeks, just like everyone else. Our hope, of course, is that our business stays solid, no one gets sick, and we can all pay our bills. I gotta say, the stress of it all is taxing. There's not many employers that are as concerned about the welfare and finances of their employees, let alone shelling out money to ease their burden in an unsure time. Cheers to my friend and boss, Polly Watts. So I guess what I'd say is, if you're an owner, see if you can be a little bit more like Polly Watts. Cheers to my friend and boss, Polly Watts. It's wild out there, y'all.